Hi, everybody. All right. So I see so many people in the house from Chicago. I'm seeing Raleigh, New Jersey, California, New York. And I could not be more excited today to talk about vibrant living. As you can see, I don't know if it's my left or your left, depending on how people are on the screen, but I have such a pleasure to have with me Dr. Vesna Skul, who is my doctor, who we were talking yesterday and today has completely changed my life. And I'm your host, Indy Lee, in case you weren't surprised, you weren't sure who I was. But Dr. Skul is going to be my co-host, and we're really going to share with you, her take on integrative functional medicine and the role of it in today's society, and certainly with what's going on in the pandemic, COVID-19. And I took notes, so I made sure that I properly introduced you, Dr. Skul. So, for those of you who don't know Dr. Skul, she is a founder and the medical director of Comprehensive Center for Women's Medicine, which is a holistic medical practice for women located in the Gold Coast of Chicago. She's a graduate of Rush Medical College, board certified specialist in internal medicine, a fellow of the American College of Physicians, an associate professor of medicine at Rush. My gosh, you're also a fellowship trained and board certified in anti-aging and regenerative medicine, which I didn't even get to talk to you about, which I find so fascinating. And you've really spent your career devoted to caring for women in all phases of their lives with expertise and lifestyle medicine, autoimmune, which is how I came to be in contact with you, hormonal balancing, menopause management, and this is what I think is fascinating. What I think a lot of people are going to love is learning about the integration of functional medicine in mainstream practices. So, Dr. Skul, thank you.
Thank you, Indy. I'm going to add something else, which actually my CV does not talk about, but it's the most fun part of my bio, I think, is that I love to get my hands dirty and I love to garden. So I'm an organic gardener and also a certified raw organic chef. So
really?
So yeah. So
okay, is there anything you don't? I was reading your CV. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's so fascinating. But what I love is that you really have spent your life helping to empower women to live their healthiest life, which obviously is so important to us as a brand. But you really, that's what your career has been dedicated to.
Well, it's been really a blessing to have chosen the path, which really did not come to me. I was not born with a stethoscope around my neck. When I came to this country as a foreign exchange student in the mid 70s and then met my husband, who actually was a reason for my permanent exchange, and he's still my husband, which is actually kudos to him. And when I decided to choose a career, it was really not to pursue journalism and English, which is how I came to this country. And you may not even know that. I found that for a woman in the 70s, there were two most challenging career paths. Law and medicine. And my dad was a lawyer, and I embarrassed him at his 40th birthday party when, as a child, I responded to his judge friend's question about what I was going to be when I grew up by saying anything but a lawyer, because your book was so dreadfully boring. Then I guess I was left with medicine. But I actually have to say that my dear mother-in-law, who is still with us at 93, vibrant and wonderful, was an internist and had to redo her career of internal medicine all over when she and my father-in-law, also a physician, 95-year-old, functioning and vibrant, came to this country in the 60s. And I thought that, looking at her and her achievements, at the time, it really made me realize this is a beautiful profession, and it is one which is always going to allow me to look at every person in a different way and a vantage point. And even though my education was in a traditional internal medicine, disease-based model, where internal medicine was so brilliant and beautiful because it's like a big puzzle, and you're putting the pieces together, and you're creating diagnoses. And the better diagnostician you are, the better doc you are, and you can help the patient more. But there was a flaw with that educational process because it was looking for disease entities.
Yes.
And
Yes.
different diagnoses and looking at patients as diagnoses. And it never really sat well with me. So people knew me in medical school and residency as the granola doctor.
Oh my gosh. So back then you knew that your calling was much bigger than just conventional, as we call conventional medicine.
The allopathic path. And, I in the 70s, I cooked organic food for my dogs. So need I say more? But so my passion for healing, it really has been lifelong, and it stems from love and abundance of my two grandmothers who were healing everything with oil of oregano or chamomile tea. Now, granted, I can't really promise that I can do the same for my patients, but I really came from an environment where there really wasn't an approach to health as we are teaching it still to this day in the United States and the Western world, and there is a pill for every ill. There was
Well, that's why I came to you. So I was very lucky that my friend and mentor introduced me to Dr. School when I was at the point where I thought I was going to have to go back on, heavy pills for my arthritis. And I struggle with autoimmune. And I wanted someone who was going to look at me as a whole and get to know me and not just try to give me a pill for that one thing. And what I realized through working with you is you're looking at me, and I mean, what you'll go into, really looking at this person, and it's not disease based, it's lifestyle based, it's my history prior to even being born based, it's everything and how that all fits into who is Indy Lee and what is going on. And as a result of working with you, and why I'm so excited for you to share your approach, is why I'm on no medicine right now at all. And I'm thriving with rheumatoid arthritis. And do I have my flare ups every once in a while? Of course. But just working with you, I've never felt better. So thank
well.
you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Indy. And it is really very empowering to hear from patients and to patients to know that even though they may have a predisposition towards a certain disease state or an illness, that there is so much we can do. The science of epigenetics, study of changes in the organism caused by modification of expression of certain genes rather than alteration of the genetic code itself, in the last 10, 15 years has brought about so much hope for patients who have, even a genetic deck that is even far more serious than an autoimmune illness that you are living with. And knowing that through certain lifestyle practices, we can suppress those bad genes and promote the expression of good ones to live our best, vibrant lives is really remarkable. And until you really experience it, and one does not have to have a bad illness, but just the quality of vibrant life once you complete a cleanse, for instance, and how much clearer your thinking is and how much better you feel, you realize that there is really a lot you can do or we can do to live our best health.
So maybe you can share with everybody what the difference is between functional medicine, integrative medicine, conventional, because I know there's a lot of confusion when people say functional medicine, or they'll say, well, I just go to a regular internist. Can you
Mhm.
explain for our viewers? And I know this is being live streamed on Facebook. I know this is also going, we're taping this so we can share this on YouTube for those people who had to tune in later, or perhaps they drop off. But I think that is something that people still struggle with and don't understand.
So I think that the functional medicine is totally gaining traction and has in the last decade or so, as the way of approaching healthcare, um, that conceptualizes health and illness on a continuum, and looks at a patient, and or patient's history, perhaps even before they were born, because it's the behaviors and environment and of our parents and their ancestors that shape our clearly genetic destiny. But then, putting that in the perspective and a relationship which is ongoing with our environment that changes all the time and has in our lifetimes, unfortunately not for the better.
Mhm.
But knowing that we are in a constant dynamic relationship with that environment, that its toxicity and changes and EMF and a variety of factors can influence expression of those genes and or suppress them, gives us the way to look at the components of the human biological system uh, that are interacting with one another all the time. Not to forget the psychosocial aspects, not to forget the stress that modern society imposes on us. So, functional medicine looks at all of that, not just, you know, Indy's blood pressure is high today, so let's give her a pill for her blood pressure. Let's look at the reasons why that is. Or somebody's thyroid hormones are off and let's give them the thyroid pill. Well, maybe we should look at, where did they live? Did they have, procedures like radiation for acne years ago, and then their thyroid is now transforming or possibly even transforming into a malignancy? Are they getting enough nutrients, selenium, zinc? And could we maybe look at the immune system that's going awry and creating that suboptimum state of the endocrine functioning, and then put it all together, as opposed to making the diagnosis and then prescribing that pill for that.
Base. In other words, that's really how
Right.
traditional medicine, as I know it, has been more disease based. And how do you
Absolutely.
ease, not looking at what's systemically what's causing it and what can we do to change it.
In case, in fact, I think that healthcare is a real misnomer.
Yes.
It should be disease care, right? And actually, 20 some years ago, when I was working as an academic physician at my alma mater, one of the best universities in the country, and quite frankly, if you're ill with a major problem, you need to have heart surgery, you need to have orthopedic surgery, you need to have neurosurgery. There's no better place than a modern medical center, academic medical center, equipped with the best of the best surgeons and physicians. But they become paralyzed and actually quite frightened when the word wellness pops up.
Yeah.
20 years ago, when I started the Rush Center for Women's Medicine from the wellness perspective and brought in practitioners who are not MDs, but craniosacral therapists and acupuncturists and nutritionists, it was so very scary for the powers that be because they didn't know what to do with that. But they were very well equipped to deal with disasters like what we are seeing at the front lines right now, and patients who are occupying ICUs with COVID and related complicated circumstances, and there's no better place than to be under care of such physicians. But fortunately, our lives are not a crisis like that at all times. And it is great that society as a whole is beginning to look at wellness and health and understanding it. And it is all of you. There's a bunch of you on this call. I am sure, very well informed, very well educated, and presenting your physicians with what we need to be presented with: concerns, questions, information. But, where do we get that information? Dr. Google can be pretty over.
Yes. It's very plain. Don't ever go to WebMD. That's what I always say, because it's true.
So,
What I think what's interesting is a point that many people don't realize is integrative medicine, functional medicine does not mean, and come from a practical place of wellness doesn't mean that if you're sick, if you need surgery, that you're going to give them oil of oregano. If you have an ear infection, a
absolutely.
throat, you're still going to use the modern sciences when needed, but you're going to look at really what's systematically causing it. Correct?
Absolutely, Indy, you're absolutely correct. But on the other hand, you will not, the functional practitioners will not reach for the prescription pad and write up an antibiotic for every little earache that little Johnny has, which is 99% of the time viral, and it will go on to resolve on its own. And a single course of antibiotics can wreak havoc on little Johnny's microbiome and his little gut, and future consequences of that dysbiosis. So, we will try to look at other ways of dealing with non-life-threatening and non-urgent circumstances, but recognize that, like I said before, there's not a better place than a major medical center with all of its technological resources when we're dealing with a life-threatening emergent illness.
So, from what I know with working for you, you're really about helping to build an immune system, right? You're trying to build wellness so that the times that patients come in for a disease or for an illness are far and few between. I mean, you and I have had the conversation. You're hoping that people are just coming for their once a year checkup, but you work with them to build their wellness practice so that they're living vibrantly. And how do you do that? Like, how does that start for you? And where does it start?
So I think that information and education is empowerment. So I really work with my patients to send them to resources, to teach them myself, and encourage them to look for information so that they could really become self-sustainably healthy and really make me obsolete over time. As you and I talked, once a year, woman visit, or actually I do have about 5 to 10% of my patients are men, and brave men they are, who don their pink gown when they come to the Comprehensive Center for Women's Medicine. But once a year, so we can assess the state of your health, and the rest of the time, it really is about how we take care of 3 major systems in the body. Is how I like to think of the cornerstones of vibrant health: our neuroendocrine system, our immune system, and our gut. And if those are in balance, they're so interconnected. You not only feel great, you look vibrantly wonderful, and in your area of expertise and work.
As my lights go off, I asked my family to fix this, and notice they didn't, guys. I have energy efficient light. I knew it was going to happen. Keep going.
So in your work and your beautiful products that you've developed for vibrantly looking skin, you can put all the natural products, all the beautiful serums, all the the moisturizers and topicals, if the body is not vibrantly healthy from the inside, they're going to have limited efficacy.
100%.
And, communication of our second largest organ, our skin, with the internal organs, and the largest one, our gut, incredibly important. And therein, is the communication with gut-associated lymphoid tissue, or where 2/3 of our immune system resides. So having the appropriate balance of those three, the brain, the pituitary, the gut, and the immune system, is really, all we have to do. And believe it or not, I'm a foodie, and I like my food. I like to grow it. I like to cook it. I like to eat it. And the old statement that is ascribed to, and there's actually controversy in medical history, in medical historians are not quite sure if Hippocrates coined the phrase, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." But when we think back to, this was almost 2,500 years ago, and when you pay attention, and I tell that to my medical students as they're finishing their educational process and before they're about to take the Hippocratic Oath, listen to what it says. Hippocrates was really a functional medicine guy. He was a lifestyle medicine guy. He recommended food as medicine. He recommended walks after your major meal. And we have put so much meat on those bones and the skeleton of that understanding now that clearly, if you want to not be leptin resistant and not get all of your calories to go on your hips, get up after dinner and go for a walk. If you have the need to neutralize free radicals, drink an antioxidant drink, eat a lot of berries, the darker the skin, the better. So there really is so much that can be done by right lifestyle choices, from nutrition to exercise to stress management, especially at a time like this. And let's not forget the sleep, which is so important.
And that's a pandemic in and of itself, the lack of sleep for people, not just here in the States, but worldwide. People are just
worldwide.
I really think that technology has kind of gotten in the way of that, because we're scrolling and we can be connected at all hours. And I don't think that people realize the importance of it. That's something you and I spoke about, because I know I wasn't getting enough sleep, and that, of course, was impacting my immune system. I know if I don't get at least 2 days of sleep, I'm not going to feel well. Like, I'm going to start feeling sick.
Absolutely. And, again, this is you listening to your own body. So believe it or not, there are people out there who just misinterpret or block the loudly spoken messages that our body is giving us every day. And they just block them because, there's a deadline, and I have to work, and I have to work at my computer, and I have to be exposed to all the EMF. And I am a superwoman because I worked all day, and then I came home to my second job and dealt with the 3 screaming kids and a growling husband, and I did all the housework, and now I'm doing emails before I go to bed, and I can manage all of that with 4 hours of sleep. Aren't I great? Well, after burning your candle on both ends like that, it catches up with you. And my aha moment was in my mid-40s when I realized that, no, I am definitely carving out 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. Sleep hygiene became really something that I had to work on because I was that person. And, that's one of the things that I teach my patients from the very first encounter as we go and explore that longitudinal history. And, did you sleep as a child, or what was happening in your youth, and how are you incorporating stress management, and are you paying attention to your spirit and your spiritual needs? And
I love that. So I mean, anybody here from my team knows I'm woo-woo-ish. I admit it. I'm very spiritual. But I also believe that positivity
Mhm.
does play a role in my health. And I believe it plays a part in everybody's health, but certainly for my health, I know having that optimism, that positive spirit helps. And there are people in my family who go, that's not true. And we were saying, you're like, absolutely, that does play a role.
It's not frou-frou. It's actual science. Neuropsychoimmunology actually is a real science that hardcore scientists can sink their teeth in. There are tests that we can markers that we can measure. They've looked at school performance, so starting from childhood, adolescence, and adulthood performance and tests, the scores of psychological functioning, and a number of biomarkers can be actually measured. And it is found that laughter and good predisposition and positive thinking actually transform some of those markers into the ones that promote good health versus the ones that can create more stress, more cortisol, which has a devastating effect on one's health in many cases. And it's just one that I mentioned because most people are aware of it, but there are many other markers that can be so measured. So you're absolutely right. Positivity translates into good health and creativity.
See that, team? This is why I'm always so happy. And I do. I know that exercise plays a part into this. Obviously, we talk about diet and sleep. And I know that so many people have actually asked questions, which I will get to. But if you had to say before we get to questions, and by the way, I should mention if anybody has questions, there is an ask question box on the bottom of the screen. So you can ask the questions there, and we will absolutely get to those. But what do you think are some of the most important practices to maintain right now during this pandemic? Like, what could people start to think about now as we start to re-enter the world, pretty much?
Well, I think that, clearly, as the stay at home um, orders are being lifted, we're seeing it's high time for people to emerge, and we're social beings. It's very difficult, even among the loved ones or in isolation, to function properly. Um, but many people have actually had the opportunity to acquire a new habit, which takes, from 2 to 6 weeks, typically 6, to acquire. So I talk to a lot of my patients. In fact, we are just next week. I'm going to softly see two patients 2 days a week in the office. We've done telemedicine. So thank you, good technology and modern technology for that ability. So not all technological things are bad. I'm grateful for that, but I've worked with some of my patients and helped them develop some of the new behaviors, such as structuring your day around exercise. Just because you're near the refrigerator doesn't mean you have to open it 10 times a day and reach for the wrong foods. So creating a healthy lifestyle, doing a cleanse. It's great to do a 10-day vegan cleanse, which I recommend to people on a seasonal basis. We've rearranged our closets in our homes about 17 times over, in our pantries. Why not attend to this temple with cleansing it? So becoming a vegan, even if you're, Eastern European carnivore and can't live without meat for 24 hours, has proven very easy for many patients. And when they see how much better they feel, they really, I think, will be able to continue that practice as we move forward. So be kind to your gut, because really gut is where half of our more than half of our immune system resides. There are 90% neurotransmitters, particularly serotonin, are produced there. There is a gut-brain connection, And clearly, people are feeling anxious and stressed and somewhat depressed, but it is not just the butterflies in the stomach and the gut feeling. It really is true that if we are attending to the gut, the brain is going to be functioning better. So doing a cleanse and not forgetting to do some self-help through sleep, we talked about,
Mhm.
mindfulness, and write a gratitude journal. Um, Pray, if that's what you want to do. Meditate. And people are like, "How do I meditate? I've never meditated." Well, just find a quiet spot and do some breath work. It has so many phenomenal physiologic benefits, but it also clears your head and it just aligns everything. And go for a walk. Here in Chicago, as many of folks who are here online with me, you all know, a week and a half ago, we were wearing down coats. Now the weather's turned winter to summer. We jumped. Go for a beautiful walk. I was walking in my own neighborhood here in the downtown of Chicago, and hyacinths were in bloom at the cultural center. I always love to see them every spring. For the first time, I was able to smell them. So this horrible time that has sort of sequestered us and created a new paradigm of eerie living has also shown us that the planet as a whole has cleansed.
Oh, for sure. We're seeing birds all over the place. We're seeing, animals back in the fish back in the canals. I mean, it's
Stars in
unbelievable.
the skies.
Oh my God, vibrant. It's just, you
Yes.
see the smog levels are down, the ozone, the whole layer is repairing. It's just, it's incredible to see how through this pause, Mother Nature is starting to heal itself.
Yes.
So
And
I absolutely love that. I think there are a lot of silver linings that have come out of this if we take the time to look for them. But I do know that people are very nervous to go out,
mm,
um, and they're nervous. They're scared, rightfully so. And I mean, we've talked about this. You're smart, wear a mask, listen to what they're saying, but and just by strengthening your immune system isn't going to necessarily mean that you're not going to get it. But you've seen even your patients who have that you share with.
oh, absolutely, Indy, that is so true. And this is just because we're allowing ourselves, or the states are reopening, and we can go out, and eagerness to be in large groups is tremendous, and we're seeing that. I'm just hoping that we won't see the re-emergence of cases, but unfortunately we probably will in some places where the social distancing is not being honored, because this is an invisible enemy, if you will, and you don't really know if a person next to you is spreading it asymptomatically. So we have to assume that all of us have the virus and be respectful of others by facial covering when in proximity of other people. We have to really only slowly get into social situations, keeping that in small groups with distancing. And over time, hopefully, things will change. The questions I get a lot are about testing and antibodies and what does that mean. Very confusing and not an exact science, because there isn't a test that is specific enough and sensitive enough to assure us that we have had the illness. And even if it were, we wouldn't quite know how long that protection of antibody protection would last. So I think hand washing and respecting all of the things that we've talked about is very important, but it is also important to get out and to be in the nature, to go take a hike in the woods. I can't wait for the Chicago lakefront to reopen, because the lake is healing, and as are our biking trails and hiking trails, and getting close to nature, getting barefoot in nature, doing some earthing and grounding and getting the positive energy from the Mother Earth, which is continuing to renew herself. And just look around and see how beautiful it is. So I think enjoying that will help us all, and keep those three systems in appropriate alignment, nourish our neuroendocrine cognitive system, help our gut with its vast, beautiful microbiome through appropriate clean, green, and rainbow colored diet, and
the rainbow.
Balance our immune system, which then allows us to deal with anything, including a nasty virus like this, as had been evidenced by dozens of my patients and Dr. Hoyer, my partner's patients, who we were able to keep out of the hospital. And I believe there were only 2 that spent a short period of time hospitalized, but they're all recovering and depending on their own body's innate wisdom to heal and repair itself when we give it what it needs.
So by really strengthening your immune system, coming from a place of wellness, it's allowing our body to get ready, so that if something like this does come into contact with us, we're able to fight it off a little bit better than other people who aren't taking care of themselves, is what you're basically saying. Stack the cards in your favor.
Absolutely. Again, this is that choice and that science of epigenetics and or a robust and strong immune system and robust and strong gastrointestinal system, allowing us to take on whatever we need to take on.
Okay, so we have 9 questions people have already asked. So if your permission, I would love to ask some of these so that people can get some of their answers. I know they're so excited. So some were written into us on social media, so I'll address those. So one of them was, let's see, where am I going? Okay, regarding epigenetics, what can we do to help turn on and off certain genes that may lead to disease? I've definitely heard of nutrition choices as well as getting exercise and being out in natural vitamin D.
So sure, those observations are absolutely accurate and great. And vitamin D is, actually a lot more than a vitamin. It acts as a hormone. We need a lot of it. And in the pandemic and viral infections, it actually high doses of vitamin D help, are clearly antiviral, but there are many other things. So stemming and the core of epigenetic transformation is really looking at our metabolome, our gut microbiome, feeding, eating foods that are naturally rich in probiotics and prebiotics, fermented foods. Our gut is the largest organ in the body. And there was actually some confusion about the size of the gut if we were to splay it out, and small intestine and large intestine. And we now think it's a little smaller than what was originally thought, which was the size of a tennis court. We now know it's probably a little smaller, like a small studio apartment, still very large. So its absorptive surface needs to be healthy to absorb nutrients. It has to have ability to actually produce things like vitamins, certain B vitamins, vitamin K, that facilitates absorption of vitamin D, among other things. And in so doing, we have to populate it with good bacteria that come from dietary sources that I've mentioned: kimchi, kombucha, fermented, if you eat dairy, fermented dairy. And frankly, my recommendation about dairy is only eat fermented dairy, because milk is typically pro-inflammatory. So keeping inflammation down also epigenetically helps, favors expression of the better genes and good genes, because inflammation it leads to something called glycation. Think of it as like searing the meat or caramelizing things. That may be good in a gourmet meal, but very rarely. It's not good when you think about your cells being caramelized and aged. So something called advanced glycation end products or age is to be avoided, and we avoid it by ingesting anti-inflammatory foods, the rainbow of color, and thus supporting that process of turning down the genes that would just be exploding if we provided them inflammatory stimuli. But by drinking things like anti-inflammatory and antioxidant beverages that derive from dark-skinned berries, green tea and green tea extract, pycnogenol, at the time of COVID, substances that contain quercetin, a rainbow of vegetables again, and including onions, etc., are containing products that act as ionophores and allow other substances into the cell, where they can, in the case of viral replication, stop the replication. So again, your foodie is answering the question.
Yeah.
Food and lifestyle has a tremendous impact on that epigenetic expression, and rightfully so. So even one cleanse can have a tremendous benefit that lasts for several months. But one cleanse is not enough. When people come to me and say, well, I want to do a cleanse a year, I don't think so, because, the air we breathe, the water which we shower with, unless you filter out the halides out of it, is providing a toxic assault on our bodies. And every so often, and my recommendation is do it seasonally, just like we clean our house, big spring cleaning, and then rotate the winter clothes.
We all look at it. Yep. Make sure you're tossing your expired.
In this house, yes, and do it seasonally. So detoxes support, with food, and your genome may not be as expressed, even if your deck of cards, genetic cards, is not as good as you'd like it to be.
Got it. Okay, so then there's a lot of autoimmune, but this one I saw that was really interesting. I find that sometimes it is hard to get straightforward answers from my doctor. What is Dr. Skul's advice for getting more detailed and in-depth answers from our doctors? I love that question, because I had that issue when I was sick. I had so many doctors said, this is your life sentence. You have a few months. I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do for you. And I'd say, why? Can you, and I trusted my gut, but I had to fight on until I found a doctor who would talk to me and take a chance. But I find so often that doctors give you just that, they want to get you out. That 15 minutes that they have you for, and they get you out. So how do you create this relationship?
You just said it, Indy. I think the key was they have the 15 minutes, and actually I think a national average is 12 minutes. In a healthcare system that's broken and has a potential to be the best healthcare system in the world because of what we talked about. We have the brain power, we have the technology, we have the facilities, but we have something fundamentally broken in our healthcare system, which pushes you through an office of a conventional doctor every 4 patients an hour or more. It is difficult to even say hello in 12 minutes, let alone to hear and register what a patient has to say. So, with all respect to colleagues who would like to and have the ability to, but don't have the time, that may be a problem that's inherent to our system. Now, because of the system being so broken, there is this dichotomy, and more practitioners are leaving the conventional way of practicing, becoming, concierge doctors or membership doctors, where time can be rewarded, but then a patient can also be heard. If the patient does not have the ability to see such a physician, I think coming prepared with as much information and as in crisp and concise way, and trying to reach out to the physician prior to the appointment, if they will accept their email or communication, may bring some clarity to the encounter.
Great idea. That's like to in advance. It's hard. It's a tough situation. I mean, that's why I changed doctors. I was tired of, how are you possibly going to know what's wrong with me in 15 to 20 minutes, 12 minutes, you know?
And indeed, that is kind of why years ago we stopped seeing managed care patients, because that was the paradigm. And 3 years ago, we went out on network, because my personal approach to patient care is time is never wasted. The more time I spend with you, the more pieces of that puzzle I can put together, but I can also not just listen, but hear you. And we can establish that relationship, which is so necessary for the appropriate recommendation and the best outcome. So it's not an easy question to answer, or it's not an easy situation to deal with, because most patients are sort of tied to the conventional system that we have. But I think it's on its way of changing.
And I think you're right, coming prepared and pushing to get the answer you need.
And advocating for yourself.
And that was the
Because,
advocacy.
sometimes, especially in very serious medical circumstances, I actually ask patients to bring someone with them, because there is a second set of ears and eyes, and so that we can have validation, or if there's stress and anxiety and you forget to ask a question, your significant other, your partner, your friend can remind you of that. So coming supported by people you trust and love. And
I
trust and love.
agree. Those who know me, when I was going through my before surgery, my best friend came with me to every appointment, and it was just incredible. It was such an important experience. Okay, so I have another question. This got 2 votes, so a lot of people want to know about this one. A lot of new research has suggested some issues around birth control and having potentially long-term effects to the body. What questions should I be asking my doctor if I'm considering birth control or need to change the type of birth control I'm taking?
So, I am traditionally trained as an internal medicine doc, but I've also done a lot of work in women's gynecology, because I was frustrated as a medical student, didn't know if I wanted to be a gynecologist or an internist. So I ended up being a women's specialist and combining the two. It has always bothered me, the notion that, in order to achieve one goal and achieve it very successfully, namely successful contraception, had to interfere at the very core with a very important aspect of our health. Those 3 things we talked about: endocrine piece, immune, and digestive. And there was something that I felt and didn't yet have the evidence for, that suggested to me that if you mess with your hormones for a long time, there's something likely to happen as the outcome of that. So many young women who are on birth control, from the moment they virtually start menstruating, and a lot of times for reasons other than contraceptive. Oh, you have 3 pimples and let's give you birth control for acne.
Mhm.
Or, you have very bad PMS and let's give you birth control for that. So there's definitely interference with what Mother Nature has designed for our endocrine system to express and function. And, it is not unlikely to expect then maybe return to fertility is going to be delayed. Combine that with toxic environment and autoimmunity, we're seeing so many seemingly young, healthy women in their 30s just having challenges conceiving. So my recommendation to someone who is seeking a reliable form of birth control is really these days to go with a non-hormonal IUD rather than hormonally based therapies, because you never know whether you are going to be one of those people who for some reason has hidden reasons for infertility, and should you decide to start a family, you might not be able to. The only circumstance where a short-term use of hormonal contraception is deemed helpful, and I have used it in some women myself, in women who may have a very strong genetic predisposition to ovarian cancer as part of certain syndromes, where even in their mid to late 40s, keeping them on 1 year hormonal contraception, not so much for contraceptive purposes, but to sort of create a senescent state of their ovaries, and has been shown in medical literature to be very helpful. But I would, I recommend to all of my young patients to think through those choices, and a return to an old-fashioned non-hormonal IUD might be the way to go.
Amazing. Okay, so now we're getting into a lot of autoimmune. So here's one. I've been told that people, this is from Valerie, I've been told that people with autoimmune disorders are prone to other autoimmune disorders. My mom has multiple and I have one as of now. What can I do to prevent myself from developing other issues in the future? Great question, Valerie. Great question.
Excellent question. And I mean, Valerie has really paraphrased what I often tell patients: where one autoimmune disease lives, there is going to be another. So what do we do to basically strengthen our innate immune system is a question. And, again, we are returning back to the gut. The best way to support your immune system is to take an appraisal of your digestive habits, change your diet, make sure that you're supporting the health of your gut, and dealing with dysbiosis, which is so prevalent. Leaky gut, as you've probably heard, many of you, is very prevalent, and does not imply diarrhea. It actually is refers to a condition where the beautiful flora of the GI system is upset and disturbed, and there are breaches in integrity of the tight junctions of the cells that keep the gut together. And partially digested nutrients leak into the circulation, and the body then recognizes them as foreign. Antibodies to those foreign proteins form, and antibodies form very often to tissues that are innate tissues. So if we correct the leaky gut, if we improve the integrity of the intestinal lining, we are already on the way to recovery of the process, which then ignites the immune system that lives in the gut-associated lymphoid tissues and supports this inflammatory process. So, again, gut is at the crux of so many things. So healthy diet, healthy elimination will translate into improvement in the immune function as well. And then there's definitely some immunomodulating nutritional supplements that we could support the person with. And, those are more case-to-case specific. Hello?
My camera died and everything died.
Oh,
But you're still on screen.
I'm still talking to myself.
No, everybody else too. I don't know why they cut me off.
Well, it's
So this is what I'm going to do.
okay.
Because everybody can hear me. I'm going to read you the questions.
Okay.
You can answer them. And then I will turn this off for everybody.
Okay. So can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And they can hear you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
Technology, I love it.
well, you know what? The handy women do it. We make it work. Okay. So you can
Yes,
read me
we do.
the question and then we'll answer it.
Okay, I can't understand what happened. Okay. So the question is, RA, and I'm on weekly every. Can I get off all meds and how?
You know what?
Also,
Could you please repeat it? I didn't hear it.
look, I have RA, and I'm on weekly enabral.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get off all meds and how?
Well, you know, I think that the desire of all patients who are on serious immunomodulating drugs is probably to take fewer of them or none at all. I think it's a very individual question, and immunomodulating drugs do play a role. I would never recommend blanketly to a person to stop their medication, but I think through nutritional assessment, introduction of natural immunomodulators, through dietary supplementation, we can transition patients and often keep them off medication for a long period of time indefinitely, and while keeping the inflammatory process at bay.
Perfect. Okay, there's another one. For Parkinson's and gut health, is almond milk a good substitute for regular milk?
Regular milk is pro-inflammatory, so I think that nut milks in general are a better alternative. And as I mentioned before, the only dairy that I recommend patients consume is fermented dairy, such as kefir or Greek yogurt. But there is a very important point that is being made with this question, and that is there's definitely an association between gut health and microbiome and neurodegenerative diseases. That association transcends the gut brain connection, in that it is now recognized in allopathic traditional medical literature and neurology literature that there is a clear correlation between exposure to environmental toxins and neurodegenerative diseases. So again, cleaning the environment, and that means, you know, things from household cleaners to personal products that we use, and that's where, you know, these products come into place, because again, skin is our second largest organ, and what you put on your skin is important. What you clean your kitchen and bathroom with, and your wooden floors with, is important. So avoidance of environmental toxicity, regular cleanses, and then specific support of the neuroendocrine system with antioxidants, with dietary choices and nutritional supplements that help neutralize the reactive oxygen species and reduce the oxidative stress, can definitely bring about great improvement in patients with neurodegenerative diseases and movement diseases such as Parkinson's disease.
You're amazing. Okay, so it's a little after 8. So I know there's a couple of questions about what cleanses to do, etc. And I would suggest that they reach out to you, and perhaps you could share how people who are on this can reach out to you and learn more about what you do and how maybe they can connect with you for help.
Oh, sure. I would be more than happy to take those questions individually. We have, as I mentioned, been doing telemedicine now for 2.5 months, and I certainly would welcome new telemedicine patients, or even, a brief consultation without a formal appointment if people so desired. Our website is www.ccwm.com, Comprehensive Center for Women's Medicine. And, I would certainly be happy to individually discuss the approach to cleansing and nutritional supplementation with people who are so interested, because it is a complex and complicated subject and an industry that is highly unregulated. And even the best informed individuals who've researched the benefits of certain ingredients are not nutritional scientists. So, it took me years to master some of that, and find supplements that are actually robust, comprehensive, and deliver, and are not costing an arm and a leg, or not causing you to have to take a suitcase full of them. So would be more than happy to address those questions individually.
Amazing. And I see that my team already put a little thing on the bottom that says contact Dr. Skul directly.
Okay.
Thank you, team. I love you. I still have no idea why this happened with my audio and visual, but you know me, I roll with things and I figure out a way to.
We totally did, right?
I was like, okay, there's another way to do this. But I do want to say thank you to everybody who joined us today. I hope you found this as informative and empowering as I did. And I really wanted to thank you, Dr. Skul, for giving up your time and really coming on here and helping others to learn how they can really embrace vibrant living.
Well, Indy, the pleasure is all mine, and I am delighted that you've invited me, and would certainly welcome future opportunities, because I think the need is out there for people to express their concerns and for us to provide them with science-based answers.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. I have recorded this. It will eventually go up on YouTube. And I'm going to convert this into a podcast too. So we'll be sharing that on our social media channels. But I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Sorry for the technical difficulty too.
Thank you, everybody, and have a pleasant, blessed evening.
Bye.
Good night.